Well, pretty good afternoon from the Horseshoe in Columbus on a perfect November afternoon where the Ohio State Buckeyes took care of business. And most importantly, in my opinion, they looked the part. 45-0. They hammered the Boilermakers from Purdue, taking care of business after last week's emotional win in Happy Valley. Lots to talk about as we give our live reaction, our instant analysis post-game show, part of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State
with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today.
Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness.
This is the question on a lot of people's minds here.
Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, hey, everyone, and welcome to Columbus. If this is the first time you're joining us, we certainly appreciate that. I'm Brendan Gulick, along with Anthony Moeglin. This is part of our Ohio State Buckeyes on SI coverage after a really impressive win, a game that at times maybe didn't look awesome early on, but Ryan Day regularly says, quote, we got to leave no doubt. And by the end of this game, there was no doubt that Ohio State was obviously the better team. They had the star power. They hit the explosive plays when they needed to. They also had some really long scoring drives today. 45-0 the final score against the Purdue Boilermakers, who, for my money, actually, I think they play better than you'd expect for a 1-7 team coming in. They've obviously had a pretty bumpy season here, but this was the thorough, resounding, convincing win that Ohio State needed.
Yeah, and it, like you said, it didn't happen all at once. First half may have been a little sloppy, maybe wasn't as smooth as us Ohio State fans wanted it to be, and even the Ohio State players. But Ohio State has a tendency to just wear you down. They're so good, they're so explosive. They have everything that you could ever want in a team. And when the third quarter comes around, when the fourth quarter comes around, sometimes they end up being way too much for an opponent. And you saw a great example of that today.
Buckeyes punted on their first drive, and then it felt like they didn't punt again for a long time. Just to illustrate this, their drive summary in order after opening the game with a punt. Touchdown on a 4-play, 8-yard scoring drive. That was when they took over after the block punt. 13 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. 7 plays, 59 yards, touchdown. 13 plays, 59 yards, touchdown. 5 plays, 76, touchdown. 6 plays, 74, touchdown. Get the picture? Oh, yeah, and they had a defensive score mixed in there as well on a scoop and score, and then obviously didn't score a touchdown in the fourth quarter on the offensive side. Look, this team had some balance today. We saw some pretty special plays, right? But I don't know that there was like one singular highlight play from the game that, at least that I'm walking away from going, whoa, that was the fill-in-the-blank game. It's more for me about, hey, Jeremiah Smith broke a freshman record, and Will Howard continues to look good.
Yeah, and I'd also say, too, for this Ohio State offense, it was a really good growth day for me, in my opinion, and here's why. We talked about this a little bit in the first half. Purdue tried very hard, and you can go back and watch it, to just bleed the clock out. They had a 6-minute, 13-play, 30-yard drive that ended in no points. They had 2 drives in the first half that ended in no points, but took up nearly 12 minutes of time of possession. And why I think that Ohio State showed a lot of growth is because it's really, really hard to stay in rhythm as an offense when you're not on the field very much. And then when you do get on the field, the pressure's amped up to go score, because if you do throw an interception or you do go 3-and-out or punt it, you may not see the ball again for 6 game minutes and 30 live minutes. Like, that can wear on you. So to the fact that they go on 6 straight scoring drives is really, really impressive, especially on a day where, hey, that's how these games get to upsets, because the underdog bleeds the clock out, takes you out of your rhythm, and then you're like, oh, shoot, we're in a dogfight we don't need to be in. Ohio State didn't find themselves in that today.
So for me, the thing that I wanted to see Ohio State coming into this game, I was reckoning back to 2 weeks ago. You had Nebraska coming in, 4 weeks ago you play Oregon, and you feel like you just let one slip away, right? Oregon won the game fair and square, but you walk away from that game going, God, we're right there, right? Yeah. You got the long layoff with the bye. Nebraska comes to town off a 50-point loss, and this place was flat. I mean, no juice in this building. And Ohio State kind of played like that, right? I don't know what to attribute that to specifically. I think Nebraska's a little bit better than their record indicates. I know some people say, listen, you are what your record says you are. I get that. I think Nebraska's really solid in the trenches, and that gave Ohio State problems. Obviously, the offensive line that day wasn't good. So I wanted to see how Ohio State responded this week after having that really emotional win last week. What was the sense of urgency like in practice? Can you go out against a team that you should pummel and go out and actually do it? And they did. And
sometimes that's really hard too, because again, we were talking before the game. You're walking in here, you're walking around the horseshoe, and it was like kind of flat there too. Like the excitement level wasn't that high, right? It's a 1-7 team, and you had asked Will Howard this in the press conference, which you can find on our YouTube page. You asked him, like, how do you guys work through that during the week? What's the mindset like when you do know, hey, on paper we're much better, and this team's coming in with a 1-7 record? And Will had a great answer. He said it's not about the opponent. For Ohio State, it's about them getting better. It's about Ohio State's performance. And while they did start maybe a little slow, as that game progressed, I thought it ended up being a very, very, very good game for the Buckeyes and a really solid performance.
And listen, when you look at the schedule at the beginning of the year, and we've made a little bit of this, you knew what you had coming back. The expectation is you're going to stay largely pretty healthy, right? You don't know what kind of injuries or adversity you might hit along the way. And thankfully, knock on wood, this team has largely been healthy. There's 3 games on the schedule at the beginning of the year that have your undivided attention. Think about how Ohio State just pummeled Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, and then frankly, even Michigan State and Iowa before they played Oregon, and all the noise you would hear, right? Everybody, all the national analysts, let me know when you finally play somebody, right? Oregon, Penn State, at the beginning of the year, Michigan, and now it's turning into Indiana more than Michigan. Those are the games that are really going to define whether or not you can achieve your goals. Mm-hmm. You lost the first game, which I don't know that I'm into like, hey, that's the best loss in the country, but a 1-point loss on the road to the number 1 team in the country is not going to be super penal. And then you go to Penn State and you win a top 5 game on the road for the first time since 2006. They check that box. You got 2 weeks here to stay healthy, stay in a rhythm, and get right before you play an Indiana team that is going to try to ruin your season.
And don't get trapped. Like that's the biggest thing too. You come off that emotional win in Penn State last week. You come in here like 1-7, maybe take a week off of practice, whatever the case. And this could be a legit trap game. This is a very much so could have been that, but Ohio State's mature enough, and they know, like, that's the good part about this veteran group, right? This is a lot of guys that came back because they had unfinished business, and when you do that, you know that, hey, these are the games that you may not remember when you think back to this season, but you have to take care of business. And Ohio State, just did that today.
You know, I was thinking about Will Howard and how, in the grand scheme of things, how not long he's been here, right? He obviously transfers in less than 12 calendar months ago. Thinking about where Ohio State was literally exactly 1 year ago, things still felt really realistic for them. So they hadn't yet lost to Michigan. And in general, how fast the year goes, you kind of spend all this time building up to hopefully getting to this point where you're going to be in the conversation, in the mix late in the year. Will talked about, hey, we want to play our best football in November, and I think that's really important. But like we are getting to that point where you pretty much have one game left where there doesn't feel like there's a ton at stake. They're never going to say that across the street here at the Woody.
Yeah.
But like this Northwestern game, you should beat them thoroughly. Mm-hmm. Indiana's really good. I don't care how bad Michigan looks this year. This program owes them one in a big way. Mm-hmm. And with all that hangs over their head, not winning that game 3 years in a row, from there, it's quote. I mean, it almost feels like even with Indiana, it's like playoff football. If they lose to Indiana, depending on what happens with that Indiana-Michigan game today, you lose to Indiana, you're not going to Indianapolis.
Yeah. And then your fate's, you don't control your fate. Now your fate's in the hands of people making decisions, and they may put you in, but they also may not. And then you're sitting there, and there's only one person to blame. It's yourself. It would be this football team, and that's where like I said, just mentioned, this maturity of this group is really big, because we were even talking about the schedule and how it would all lay out. Like we're kind of at the halfway point. Like to get where we want to go and win a national title, that national championship game is on January 20th. That's in like 2 months, right? While today's week 11 and it feels late in the year, there's still so much football left to play, and you have this team is kind of changing from Like it just feels like more of a business approach to it, where come out, take care of business, do the things you're supposed to do, and get out, right? And just check that box and move along to get closer and closer to that end goal.
But what I think is interesting, I agree with you. If you look at the totality, maybe this is roughly the halfway point. But from that perspective, basically the back half of what you're trying to accomplish doesn't have a whole lot of like easy road in front of you. And the reality is, if you, let's say you win the next 3 games, right? And you make it to Indianapolis, you have a chance to win a Big Ten title, which even in this era of not winning a conference championship, being a precursor to get you in the playoff, like Ryan Day made it clear even back at Media Day, it still matters to them. They want to be Big Ten champions. They think that actually has some weight. If you don't win the conference championship game, you got to play an extra game. So there's even that much more emphasis on like, hey, we're not going to Indianapolis with a game in hand. Like, you have to keep winning here. And I think that's part of what is enjoyable about a team that is playing this well, that looks like they have the realistic shot at winning a national title because they beat the teams they should beat. They've looked really good against the teams they need to look good against. I'm not going to sit here and be an Ohio State homer. They haven't played great this year every single snap. That Nebraska game kind of sucked. It was really, really below average by their standards. But when they're at their best, man, I don't know who's going to beat them.
And your description there makes me think back to a couple of the last Big Ten championship games, whether Ohio State was playing or not. Like, a lot of those become like such an afterthought, right? They play, it's the last championship game of the day, right? It's 8:00. It's oftentimes a team that's way outmatched. You think back to Ohio State versus Wisconsin, and you kind of just like go over there, like, all right, this game it's more of like a fun trip as opposed to, hey, we got to go over there and take care of business, because you're trying to earn a bye week. Yeah. Right. If you slip up, let's say Oregon, you meet in Oregon there, that becomes the best game of the season. That's 1 versus 2. Yeah. If that ends up being the case, and that game's for it all. That game's for a bye week, or you're in a place right behind us playing the first playoff game, or you're sitting at home waiting to see where you go. So it's going to come down. This next month here is going to get really, really exciting, and there's going to be a lot of change that happens because there's a couple good teams at the top, but it's also ultimately going to be pretty exciting.
All right, so I don't want to get like way too far down the road here, but I know that's part of the vernacular right now for fans, and that's cool, and I think it's worth mentioning. But if you want to get there, you got to take care of the business that's in front of you. And today, Purdue is the opponent. This wasn't an exhibition. It wasn't a scrimmage. You don't go in feeling like, these guys are 1-7. They've lost 7 in a row. They're 18th out of 18 in the Big Ten. Like, you can't lose your focus. And I think part of what makes this team national championship caliber for me is that they haven't ignored the little things along the way this year. It's one thing to talk about it, and they talk a lot about it. You got to go do it. And last week against Penn State, I think they backed up a lot of that talk. And then without talking a bunch about Purdue, they went out and sort of doubled down.
And took care of business and did all the things that we've been saying. Like, hey, they were very businesslike in their approach. They knew that this game could just ruin their season. You're not going to win a national title today or become the number 1 team in the country. But what could happen is you end your season, right? And I thought it was just a very mature approach. The mature has been the word I've been trying to find this whole time. Very mature afternoon by Ohio State.
Okay, statistically, just give you some numbers in case you haven't caught up on these yet. Will Howard, 21 of 26 for 260 and 3 touchdowns. Will also had a rushing score on 9 total carries, 7 yards. Obviously, college football sack yardage comes off rushing yards. He was sacked once, but for the most part was just kind of caught in some smaller running situations. Treyveon Henderson, a good day, more than 100 all-purpose yards, 6 carries for 85 and a score. And Treyveon also had 3 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. Cardell Tate, nice day, 6 catches, 56 yards. Jeremiah Smith, a memorable day, 6 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. Feels like Jeremiah Smith is the story coming out of this game today because of, basically now officially locking down he is the greatest Ohio State receiver as a freshman in program history. I think everybody felt that way in spring ball as long as he was going to be able to stay healthy. It's great to have him, and more than anything else, And Megs, it's good to have him like in rhythm and feeling good.
Yeah, and it's good to see him just be very comfortable. And also, too, the comfort that Will has in him and the comfort that the coaching staff has in him, because there's a couple times today where they went to number 4 on third down and in big leverage scenarios. You think back even to last week, it was 3rd and 9 against Penn State in the fourth quarter. Who'd they go to? They didn't go to Emeka. They didn't go to Carnell. They didn't go to G. They went to the 17-year-old. And you saw that a couple times today. There's that 2nd and 19 or third and 15 or something. He ran that curl route. He didn't kind of like slip. There's maybe been a turf problem, but it didn't get the first down. But still, it's 3rd and 15, and you go to the rookie or the freshman, and he's just amazing. Like it's fun because we get to watch him every week, and you try really hard not to become numb to it because what we're watching is like really special, and that's a guy that is going to be playing on Sundays, and barring any crazy injury or anything bad, like he's going to be like one of the all-timers. Like he has that potential to him.
Sure looks like
and he's just an absolute freak, and we're blessed to have him for the next 3 years here at Ohio State.
Let's talk a couple of specific things. I'll pick your brain on this. First, Edric Houston kind of turning more from pass rusher into 3-tech. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good, and I think if there's one place on the defense that I would kind of put a question mark on is they kind of got ran on a little bit today. Not a lot, and it wasn't especially early on. There's a couple drives that Purdue put together where they were able to run the football. The stats aren't going to say that or agree with me, but if you watch it, they had a couple gash runs, and they still have to figure that out. So however they have to do that, whoever they have to move down into that interior, I think is a good, at least to experiment with it. Maybe that's not the answer long term, but building that depth inside is always very good. And maybe you find lightning in a bottle where someone moves down inside and can be a playmaker down there.
Purdue for the game had 206 yards of total offense. All things considered, that's not too bad. In the first quarter, they had 86 of those, and they had 11 rushes in the first quarter for 46 yards. They finished the game 38 carries for 96 yards. So basically half their rushing yards came in the opening 15 minutes.
Yeah, and Maccabee today, their main running back, number 45, 13 carries for 73 yards. Like that's a good day. That I don't care who you're going against or whatnot, but that's a solid rushing.
And it's only slightly below average for him. He came in 5.9 yards per carry. He was like 6th in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you were watching the game from home, and I'm sure you probably could see it in the stadium too, there were a lot of moments in this game where it felt like Ohio State was that close to stepping on Purdue's throat early, but Hudson Card was really elusive. And to Maccabee's credit, and a couple other guys, they didn't go down easily. Yeah. And there were some plays that got extended because of some really good athleticism. I actually thought Hudson Card played okay.
Well, if we want to tell the truth too, at the end of the first quarter, it's 7-0, and there was a real feeling of, oh, here we go again, because it wasn't smooth up for Ohio State. Purdue went down the field and missed the field goal, I believe, in the first quarter. Maybe that came in the second quarter.
Second drive.
Yeah, and so you're like, oh my gosh, we're really going to come out flat, and we're going to find ourselves in a game that we don't need to be in. And again, Ohio State continued to get better and better. But to your point, I thought Hudson Card was solid throughout the day.
I'm looking over your shoulder because we are on basically the east-west approach for Columbus Airport. I wondered if it would be a bad omen pregame on a day that was very, very cool here in Columbus, Military Appreciation Day.
Yeah.
The pregame flyover was more of like a fly nearby. It really didn't go over the stadium. They went like kind of along the right edge. Anybody that was on the half of the stadium we're sitting on did not see the play that flew over.
They heard it, right? It'd be like a kicker missing it off the right upright. Where we were looking, because they called it in the press box, and it was Military Appreciation Day, and there's a bunch of police officers standing next to Brendan and I, and they were getting excited. Everyone's getting excited.
We're here to watch the play,
and then everybody heard it, and then looked over, and you could see the tails. You could see the tail of it going that way.
I literally thought to myself, there's no way that's a bad omen for this day, is there?
I was like,
they're 1-7.
Like the guy had one job. You see that big horseshoe looking building? You fly through it,
right over the top of it.
We missed it, right, guys? Sorry.
Oh man, that was really funny. All right. I mentioned a couple of players, obviously Edric Houston on the offensive line. I think Ohio State had a near miss. It looked like Carson Hinsman was hurt. And thankfully, I saw him back on the sideline. He clearly looked like he was going to be fine. Glad to see that Carson's okay, because I just don't know how many injuries on this offensive line this team could sustain.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be scary. We watched it back a couple times, and he got rolled up on pretty good. And thank God he at least got off the field by himself and under his own power. And the way you get it late into a season, and sometimes this is the way it happens, especially up front, where these offensive lines become really patchwork. And while that's super unfortunate, it's one of the things that you just got to overcome. And for Ohio State, it makes it challenging. And this is something that this was a great point here. Thanks for jumping in and watching this with us. But need to run the ball more. Yeah. And while I agree, let's talk about those 2 points. That point, and then the point of Purdue kind of trying to milk this clock out and really try to slim the game down. That takes away from your ability to kind of establish the run. And
sure.
And when you get into a normal game against maybe a more normal opponent who's going to try to play you straight up, I think you can establish the run a little bit more. But with the way your offensive line is and the way that this game kind of felt, you're going to kind of have to lean on maybe a big play here or there just to gain some momentum. Like Quinshon today, not his best day, right? 13 carries, 32 yards, 11 carries for 32 yards. That's not good. That's not what they want. But Treyveon kind of picked him up, right? That's the nice part about having that 1-2 punch. While we've been saying all year long, that's the best back duo in the country. There's a good example why. Treyveon goes 6 carries for 85 yards in that big score, that long 29-yarder. Hey, Quinshon didn't have his fastball today. Treyveon picked it up and did so in a big way.
Yeah, and you need depth. You need lots of different guys to carry you through, a challenging, lengthy season. I don't know how much deeper we need to go on a game that Ohio State was supposed to beat the crap out of somebody, and they did. They won by almost 50. The last 3 possessions of the game started to play some depth. We saw Devin Brown. We saw Julian Sayin. Yeah. There were a group of fans that were particularly excited to see Gulick and Anthony get some run late. That's cool. Yeah. Ohio State trying to win now and develop for later, and that's sort of the challenge they always have to deal with.
Man, I'll tell you what, whoever's the quarterback in waiting, whether it be Devin Brown or Julian Sayin or Aaron Nolan, has to be licking their chops. And I know, because it's one thing I experienced, again, not at this level, but had the opportunity, knowing that early on in my career when I was playing, that if I won the quarterback job, I was going to have it for 3 years. Yeah. That's something similar. And not only would you win it for a extended period of time, you'd have a guy, Jeremiah Smith, who you get to throw to. So I'd say I would be doing everything in my power to try to win that job, because I'd be in the Heisman conversation. I'd be in the conversation for most touchdowns, because anytime you're throwing a number 4, it's going to be sweet. So cool to see some of those young guys out there.
Just to call out Lathan Ransom too. I thought he had a particularly good day, and the fact that he was dealing with an injury a couple weeks ago that kind of left everyone in limbo of is he actually going to get on the field? To not only see him out there, but playing as fast and as physical as he played again today. That's 2 weeks in a row now where I've gone, whoa, okay. So see number 8 on the field, and not just because of the really nice interception.
Man, I say it every week, and I'm going to say it again this week. That safety trio is fantastic. And now there's a couple. Caleb Downs. This guy's unbelievable. Yeah. He's everywhere at once. He tackles everything. He 2 straight weeks took out the opposing team's best player, right? We talked about it. Tyler Warren last week and the tight end today were the biggest threats against this Ohio State defense. And who do you put on them? You put number 2 on them. And good night, Irene, man. They're not doing anything because Caleb Downs is a special, special dude.
Caleb Downs might tackle everybody, but I think there are some folks in Buckeye Nation that would say, yeah, but he might be the only one.
Yeah,
because there were a few frustrating moments, especially in that first half, where you're kind of looking around going, is somebody going to actually wrap up an offensive player? What a concept that would be. No, I mean, look, all things considered, this checked a lot of boxes. And you get out of this game, as far as we know, pretty healthy, with a quarterback playing with some confidence. And he admitted post-game, he's like, this was not close to my best game, even this season. But still, he's like, look, I like the way I protected the football. I like the way I got the ball to my best playmakers. And if you waited this long to hear it in our post-game show, Will Howard says, don't worry, I'm going to have new cleats on next week. I got to figure out a way to stay upright because it was getting a little frustrating.
Yeah, there's a couple weird plays he had. Just 2 bad slips. That one on 3rd down was like really, really bad. But just one of those things, man, and nothing you can do about it. 2 guys I want to call out before we get out of here. First, Jack Sawyer, scoop and score touchdown.
Yeah,
awesome. If you did have to watch it at home, we were much more excited than probably what you heard in this stadium. And Jack Sawyer was also really fired up. He made a joke. It was the first time he scored a touchdown in probably 5 years. He said back to when he was playing quarterback back in high school. So him playing quarterback's a scary sight. The other one, give our boy Kevin Weike a shout out at home. G. Scott finds his way into the end zone. If you're a frequent with us here on the Buckeye Breakdown podcast, you know that G. Scott comes up every episode because he's one of Kevin's favorites. But he finds a way in the end zone. I can't wait to show that play tomorrow morning because it was a really, really cool concept by Chip Kelly in the offense.
You're going to show that play. You better show both ends of the spectrum, buddy. G had a moment early in the game where I think, what did he have? 60 yards in front of him with nobody blocking him to the end zone, and couldn't find a way to hang on the ball. Yeah. But that's okay. G got it done, and Ohio State obviously wins this one running away 45-0. All right, on to the Windy City next week. Going to be fun. It's going to be unique. I think it could be a logistical nightmare. I mean, the team's not going to have a problem getting to Wrigley Field, but at least it's not the first time that Northwestern has hosted a game at Wrigley. But, I mean, we're 7 days out from that game, and while it's going to be really cool for fans to go watch this game, I mean, I think there's like some question around like how's this all going to work? I mean, you can't put a football team in a baseball clubhouse. It's not big enough. So I am genuinely interested to see what like locker room facilities look like. It sounds like the post-game press conference is going to be in like the batting cage area. They'll pull up the nets. We'll try to bring as much behind-the-scenes coverage next week as we can because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And, you know, that'll sort of – I don't want to call it like Ohio State's last meaningless game. It's not fair to say that. But this is not a game that Ohio State should be sweating out against Northwestern. Your mentality has to be the same coming out of that game as it was this week, is figure out a way to stay healthy and stay sharp.
I would also add, too, it's going to feel like a home game. Like there's going to be a lot of Buckeye fans who make the easy trip to Chicago to go see one of the most historic football brands in one of the most historic baseball stadiums. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous and it'll be exciting to watch.
Super unique. Be a ton of fun. We got plenty of coverage coming for you this week, including looking back at some of the best plays from today with our film breakdown coming up and lots of preview content along the way as well. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Brendan Gulick. You can check out all the latest news and information on the Buckeyes over at si.com/college/Ohio State. We'd appreciate it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. It's easy to find, Ohio State Buckeyes on SI. Final score today from the Shoe, Bucks 45, Purdue 0.